This Week in Startups is brought to you by Silicon Valley Bank, who, in partnership with Founders Pledge, has formed the COVID-19 Global Impact and Innovation Fund. This fund will deliver resources directly to organizations that can help make the most immediate impact in the fight against COVID-19. Learn more at svb.com/impact. Twilio runs an amazing program for startups that includes a $500 Getting Started credit, access to webinars made exclusive for startups, and full support via their Twilio Startups team. Sign up now at twiliostartups.com/twist. And Mint Mobile. Stop paying for unlimited data that you never use. Cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month and get a plan shipped to your door for free at mintmobile.com/twist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. We're recording this episode at the end of May on Bryant Street, somewhere in the Soma district of San Francisco in 2020. If you're looking back on this as a historical document 20 years from now or 40 years from now or 100 years from now, yeah, we're in the middle of the pandemic. And it's confusing. It was scary. Now it's frustrating. Nobody can make heads or tails of what's going on. Nobody believes the statistics. The statistics are either being pumped up or they're being suppressed, depending on who you talk to, depending on the region of the world. But the good news is it feels like we're learning a lot about this virus. And hopefully, maybe, we come out of this with some stronger themes about how we should run our government, our society, our businesses, and our lives. And on the pod to talk about this is an old friend and just a great investor and a great human being. Garry Tan is with us again. He's been on the pod a couple of times. Welcome back to the pod, Garry.
Thanks for having me. Always great to be here.
How are you holding up on a very personal basis? How is your family? How are you psychologically? How do you feel emotionally? Let's chop it up.
Oh man. Honestly, I think the first few weeks of not having childcare was brutal. I think a lot of the parents are nodding their heads as they hear me say this. It's been really hard. Yeah. It's been pretty hard. But even after 3 or 4 weeks, I feel like we've really settled into this really nice groove. I think I've spent way more time with them. Gotten to know my 2 little ones. It's actually my littlest one's first birthday today.
Oh my God, amazing.
So we're having a Zoom birthday party and it's pretty great. So.
It's great that everybody's healthy. And yes, this crazy, the kids are home 3 months before the end of the school year and they're going to have a 6-month summer. Certainly is unexpected, and it's really having an impact on business when you think about it. You and I are probably lucky enough that, being in the business of raising funds that get deployed over 3 or 4 years and management fees and multiple funds, we're not looking at the world going, oh my God, how do I make rent? How do I put food on the table? But there is the second order of how do I take care of my kids if I cannot send them to school and it's not like you can hire a tutor and suddenly have them coming to your house. I don't think in a shelter-in-place pandemic. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. The rules are so confusing. I guess when you look at the businesses in your portfolio, what are they going through? Without mentioning specific names, what are the type of conversations you're having with founders right now around month 3 of this shelter-in-place order and the pandemic?
Yeah, the big question is always, well, when is the recovery actually going to happen? There's clearly 3 types of startups that are being affected. One is the ones that are deeply affected, things that touch travel. And a lot of that is about surviving. Like, let's get to the other side because there is a there on the other side, but only if we have enough capital still in the tank at the end of it. And so when the recovery happens matters a lot to that category 1 for sure.
And when you're looking at category 1 of, okay, revenue has now gone to 0, you expect that revenue might start again in Q4. Maybe in Q3 there'll be signs of life, but maybe not back to normal in a year or 2, I would guess.
And that's one where founders who are really great, they find a way. So retooling, finding another way, finding new revenue streams. Zeus is a good example where because they had software at the core of what they're doing around, housing, and they were longer term than really, really short term. They were able to keep their occupancy really high. They, are back up to 70% from a high of like sort of 85, 90 normally. So there are ways to get around. You do need to be really, really aware.
Okay, so that's group one. All right, so Zeus Living, that seems to exist maybe in the second bucket you were about to get to, which is they didn't go down to zero, but they got impacted pretty heavily. But they were creative and they rebounded. Zeus Living, for people who don't know, I think is like 2 to 6 month stays as opposed to 2 to 3 nights. 30 days and up.
Yeah.
Got it. And that's one of your investments at Initialized. So in that second category, unpack the second and third categories of startups that you're dealing with.
Well, that second category, I actually think could have grown probably 3x to 5x. I mean, Zeus was growing 4.5x year on year for, I think, 3 or 4 years running. And they're actually only going to grow 2x this year. So even in the middle
only
of all
doubling.
This madness, only doubling. And then that's sort of what we're seeing in that sort of second category broadly, that you can still grow, but you're going to grow a little bit slower. And I think broadly for that category, how do you get to actually 24 months of runway? I was talking with a later stage investor recently, and they were sort of expressing some concern over all of our portfolios right now, because, if the advice 3 months ago was 18 months of runway, then we're at 15 now. And when we come out, you're going to be at 3 or 2. Or if it doesn't happen in 15 months, then what do you do? And I think that we are still going to have a lot of bloodletting in our industry in the next 15 months. And it's something that basically all of us should be hyper aware of.
Yeah, and when you think about it, somebody brought this up on the program. I forgot who. Nick might remember. One of the producers might remember and put it in there. But they were saying, hey, people might be investing now, but starting in the first quarter of next year or second quarter, now that they've done the triage on the most acute cases, like that category 1, we might get into Q1 or Q2 and people are saying, you know what, all my dry powder in my portfolio has to go to save my portfolio breakout companies, and I'm not making new investments, and I'm not even looking at other funds' investments to try to help save their falling knives. And then that becomes what we would, I guess, sort of call a contagion, where everybody just circles the wagon and says, you know what, I'm going to just pick my 5 best companies, my 10 best companies, and I'm just going to go all in on them. You see that as having any validity?
Yeah, I think that's on the horizon. And the other thing that I think you're going to see is VCs club together a lot more. The past sort of 5 years or so has been a lot of knives out for each other at some level, because people feel like they don't need a lot of dry powder around the table. And times exactly like this are when new alliances are formed fundamentally. So we're going to see a lot more of that. It's going to matter who your VC's friends are.
And previously it did not exist because people had enough dry powder, or the market was just so frothy and flooded with capital. You didn't have to make friends with downstream investors. You didn't have to build alliances. Now what you're saying is, hey, a seed fund like mine, or Initialized best described as a Series A or seed, or both?
Still seed.
So seed
Series
funds,
A is, we're pre-product market fit. So there are a lot of great Series A firms that we really like, but we think seed is where we do our best work.
Yeah, same. Why is it that seed is so attractive to you? What do you think you do your best work there? What do you love about it? Because you could actually have your choice. Let's face it, right? You could say we're a Series A firm. You could be a seed firm.
I think you have a ton of amazing options at Series A, and at seed. What you really need is almost a different set of expertise. You need people to help you with go-to-market, PR, marketing, sales, even product design, engineering. How do you actually build your first teams? Like, that was one of the things I worked with Brian Armstrong at Coinbase on very early on after he graduated from Y Combinator, was how do I build my first engineering team? And that's the stuff that I really enjoy. That's what I know I'm good at.
Yeah, as opposed to what you might delude yourself into thinking you're good at because the market's been up. Are you looking at new investments? And
Yeah.
have you slowed that down, sped it up, or tried to keep it the same given the fact that your attention is naturally going to be joined to the portfolio companies who are trying to deal with the pandemic?
Yeah, we've slowed down a little bit. The good thing is the way Initialized runs, Alexis is actually remote. He lives in Florida right now. And so we've been able to build the whole firm around being able to move very quickly over Zoom. So, now Alexis's experience working with companies, that's my experience too. We're all in the same level playing field now. And so we've been exercising those muscles for a few years now. So COVID-19 actually hasn't changed how we work.
Have you
but we do have
invested
to
in
slow
it?
down
Yeah.
because we have to spend a lot more time with those portfolio companies.
And have you had companies that are shutting down because of this, or just, shuttering, being put on ice? And how's that going?
Luckily, we've been able to get more capital into the companies, and that's where having good friends and good allies helps a ton. But that's been a very high, a very large, high priority item on my calendar these days, is make sure we are working for our portfolio.
What does it look like for you to call another investor and say, hey, I got this great company. Yeah, they're struggling because of COVID-19, but the founder's amazing. How do you have that phone call with a downstream investor? What does that phone call sound like? People probably haven't heard that phone call, obviously.
Well, the question is always, what's Initialized doing, and are they putting more money in? And so as long as we put our money where our mouth is, I think that it's pretty clear where we stand.
What is the expectation from those downstream investors? That you'll keep going pro rata? You'll put in a $250K check? What do they expect to see to know that you're serious?
Yeah, pro rata is usually sort of what people are looking for. And then the tricky thing is, and I think a lot of fund managers right now will run into this, you don't have infinite reserves in those older funds. So for the new vintages for us, we've explicitly put aside half of our initial check for every single one of our companies. I've heard that other firms like Benchmark do the same thing. Certainly First Round came out recently publishing how they deal with reserves for outside leads. So that type of clarity is just what you really need. I think it's table stakes for a lot of people. And I think it's something that people should ask their lead investors at, seed and Series A, get something, maybe not in writing, but have that conversation with your lead when you sign that term sheet or before you sign that term sheet, to have an understanding for what's the criteria, how do I get my follow-on, and what do you usually reserve?
All right,
it's a question that founders don't really ask.
When we get back from this, I want to know, what is Initialized's policy on when to follow on and when to hold them and just stay pat with what your investment is and not put additional capital in, when we get back on This Week in Startups. As we navigate unprecedented times, Silicon Valley Bank believes that collective action is the best way to overcome the challenges we're all up against. This is why Silicon Valley Bank, in partnership with Founders Pledge, has formed the COVID-19 Global Impact and Innovation Fund. The fund will deliver resources directly to organizations around the world that can help make the most immediate impact in the fight against COVID-19. Silicon Valley Bank has made an initial $1 million investment to fund this critical work, and it invites you to join them in helping those in need. Silicon Valley Bank continues to offer solutions that support small businesses and the innovation economy. For more than 35 years, Silicon Valley Bank has supported countless innovators with a passion for solving the world's biggest problems, and today remains committed to helping its clients and employees and our communities manage through these uncertain times. To learn more about the Silicon Valley Bank COVID-19 Global Impact and Innovation Fund, visit svb.com/impact. All right, Garry Tan's on the pod. I've known him for, 15 years or something. I knew him when he was started a company called Posterous, which allowed you to email a secret email address and then have it post automatically to your Instagram, Twitter, WordPress blog, Live Journal, anything. It was a brilliant piece of software.
I miss it.
Somebody emailed me and was like, I heard you talking about Posterous. I made a new Posterous. Here's how it works. And they literally have copied Posterous. I got to find
Flipso. Flipso.com.
Flipso. Is that it? Yeah. So you
think
post there and then it just goes everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I made one too. It's called Post Haven.
Ah.
So I'm a VC that's also a bootstrapper. So
Does it actually, what does it do? It posts to all services like
Yeah.
Buffer does or whatever?
We stopped doing the auto post, and now we're just saying we're going to keep your website online forever. I wrote it into my will, actually, so there will be a foundation that's spun up if I die. And, we're going to, the whole idea here is, we were just talking about data, and ultimately the cost of storing data will come basically down to zero. And for now, there's sort of this in-between time where we still have to pay, hundreds or thousands of dollars for terabytes.
Yeah.
And that's going to go to zero. So really what we need to do is take the data that you really care about now and sort of time warp it to the time when it costs nothing to store. And it's within, hopefully our lifetimes,
I think it's a decade out. Yeah. If you just look at how it's going, as long as you don't keep upgrading, like if we upgraded the studio cameras to 4K, those get ginormous in terms of size. And they're completely unnecessary, I guess. People might look at me clip this and say like, yeah, just like HD was unnecessary. But we were talking before about our struggles with network attached storage and the best hack that I've ever seen. Nerds, exactly. The best hack I've ever seen is people upload videos to YouTube and make them unlisted. And now you've got a backup for all time for free.
Oh yeah, I do that. Yeah. As long as Google doesn't shut down your account, you're good. And they might randomly do that.
Which was another startup, Backupify, that I had invested in. And what Backupify was doing is they would authenticate with your Gmail and then copy your Gmail file out every night at midnight. So if your Gmail got hacked, like my friend Scott Heiferman from Meetup got his personal Gmail hacked, and the hacker deleted all the email. Yeah. And he lost a decade's worth of his email, which is, it's almost like every photo you ever took being burned. You just lose this archive of your life. And I also wonder, are these archives worth anything? We spend all this time archiving and no time pulling up the photos in the archive, Oh,
yeah.
Seems like that's going to be the big opportunity. I'm looking for a service. I guess Google does this to a certain extent with Google Photos where they surface stuff. I almost wish there was a paid service where somebody would look through my photos for me, make a photo book every year for me based on my archives, and just do it as like some sort of like service where you just went back 10 years ago and said, here's a photo for you of your daughters and here's their life. And just like almost like a hiring, what does the president have? The president has like a presidential photographer.
Yeah.
Like imagine you had a concierge.
Apple's pretty good at this. Google's pretty good at this too, but I really like the Apple one.
Yeah, they give you like, here's your
on
day.
Apple TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's your day. Yeah.
Here's your day.
Really good.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
But yeah, I think that we have to think about our data as something that needs to be sort of cryogenically frozen so that it can reach the singularity. And for data, there is a singularity, which is the time at which storing all data becomes basically free.
Right. And an entire lifetime worth of data is less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like imagine that situation where all your entire life's data would cost less than $10 to store.
I thought about all of this because I actually lost thousands of photos and all of my followers on Flickr when I started Posterous. So I got banned. I started Posterous. I thought the thousands of followers were my followers. So I actually started messaging them saying, hey, I started this service that works with Flickr to post your photos by email. Would you like to try it? And they deleted my account and all of my photos, and I had no backups.
Was this before or after they were bought by Yahoo?
This was before.
So you were doing a growth hack.
Yeah.
And somebody said like, hey, is this person spamming me or whatever? And they basically put you into a spam folder.
Yeah.
That's so sharp elbow. It was death.
First offense was death. And so from then on, all the things that I ever did had a unban button because, and this was one of the first brushes with the fact that software is sort of the new government. And what that means is we have to recreate all of the systems that work in society. You need a court system. We were just talking about Google. Google will ban YouTube accounts left and right. And unless you make a big stink in social media, you lose it forever. I'm sure there are people listening to this who are nodding their heads because they lost their account for some sort of incidental or even maybe accidental flagging.
And there's no appeal process.
And there's no appeal. Like there's no one listening, right?
Right.
And that's a problem.
It is. And it's the problem with being able to buy into any of these platforms and why people don't trust them. And I think the fundamental nature of email or RSS feeds was so important and such a loss to the industry that Facebook And Twitter, just basically said, you know what, we're never going to support RSS. I think Twitter removed it. I'm not certain of that. Somebody will fact check me, but I know they deprecated it at least. And now you see this with Spotify saying, hey, we're going to buy Joe Rogan's podcast. It's going to still be free, but what happens to Joe Rogan's RSS feed, right? What are your thoughts on the Joe Rogan deal in relation to this bigger, broader topic of open standards?
It's the most interesting take on Twitter that I've been reading is people think that he's going to regret it the way the Instagram founders regretted selling for just $1 billion, which is really interesting. And I think that speaks to something that people aren't really paying attention to, which is the power of the influencer. Like when I am talking with someone on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, what I realize now is when they watch me every single week, I'm actually a character in their life.
You're a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, they're my friend. And the reality is they can actually DM me on Instagram. I started this new thing where any founder can actually DM me and I will respond. I can't guarantee that I will respond forever because I just can't.
Yeah, good luck with that one. I tried that about 10 years ago. And
what was that like? Well, pros and cons. How do you make it work?
Here's the thing. Making yourself accessible is a great way to have great deal flow, right? And then at a certain point, you reach a breaking point where you cannot keep up with the inflow. And then
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And then you risk either losing your mind, ignoring your existing portfolio, or being the guy who doesn't respond.
Yeah.
And, I think people are genuinely overall understanding of a super router, which you may not be yet, but you're on your way to. You're kind of like probably in the early innings of that. You have 7,000 or 1,000 followers I saw on your YouTube account, which I watched before the show. You'll see in a year, it'll be 70,000 and then it'll be 150,000. That's kind of how it goes. You're going to add 1,000 a month or something, I would guess you're adding. Ballpark?
I'm growing 30-ish% a month, but that can't hold, so we'll see.
Well, I think it will actually, because all you have to do is do 2 videos a week, right? Or sometimes you'll have a breakout video where you didn't expect it, right? Like some breakout episode. For me, it was like the Chris Sacca episodes before anybody knew who Chris Sacca was.
Great episode, yeah.
Well, and it was like a 2-parter, and then a lot of people didn't know who Chris Sacca was before that. He was kind of underground, right? Like you may know him in San Francisco, but not publicly. He does 3 hours on the podcast. We split into 2 episodes. And then as much as it made Chris famous, it made me famous because people were like, oh, who's that guy interviewing him? He's got some good questions. And then when Travis was on, all that kind of stuff, so you get these like unexpected moments. With Spotify, the reason I love what Spotify is doing on a business basis is they have that public market capital where they can buy stuff, or, in the case of, it's a licensing deal. So they're buying him essentially for 3 years or 5 years. I don't think the term is public yet, or I haven't read a term. So let's just say it's for 5 years. It's $100 million, $20 million a year. That's probably on top of the $30 million he's making now. So it's perfect for Joe Rogan. He gets an extra 10 or 20 million a year. It's perfect for Spotify. They get all those users who come, and some number of them are going to go buy subscriptions to Spotify. So if Spotify is what, $10 a month? So $100 a year, maybe?
Yeah.
They need only get 1 million more subscribers. I'm going to argue Joe Rogan brings a couple of 100,000 subscribers. What's great about it for everybody else is I think Joe Rogan goes from being the #1 podcast on iTunes and other platforms. And because he's not updating that feed or he's putting short clips on it, I think it's going to go down. So that gives somebody else the chance to be #1. Then maybe Ben Shapiro becomes #1 or somebody else becomes #1. Then they get bought out. So it keeps the top 100 lists on those other platforms gives everybody a chance to move up 1 rank, basically.
Yeah.
And the person on top gets paid.
I'm excited about all this new content. And I actually am my side goal with my YouTube channel is I'd actually like 1,000 other people to also start, and then we can all do collabs together. And then that's how we truly hack the YouTube algorithm together.
Yeah, I'll do a collab. Well, this is sort of a collab.
This is a collab.
Well, I mean, it would only be a collab if...
I need you to come on my YouTube channel and then...
Or, I don't think that's it. No, what we have to do is we have to come up with a concept for a piece of content that would fit both our formats. So if you took this episode... and then you put some stock footage in it and a drone, and then you and I did something in your format with a blurred background for me, and it'd be about you coming on my podcast, that's a crossover, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So you permission granted if you wanted to chop this up in any way.
I'm down.
Make it into your collab.
That sounds great.
Collab. Is that how you pronounce it, Nick? Collab? Collab? Collab. Yeah, it's going to be great for podcasting, I think. I had a question before we went to break, and I forgot what I asked you. Do you remember?
Oh, we were talking about follow-ons.
Follow-ons, yes. So you typical check size for you is $500K, $1 million. What do you put into a company
$1
typically?
million to $5 million, which is a pretty wide range now, I realize.
That's pretty wide range, yeah. So let's just put it at $2 million.
Product market fit. Yeah, 2.5. That's about right.
Okay, so we'll say $2 million for ease of math. What would you then say to the founder of, hey, here's what you can expect from Initialized when you do your Series A?
Yeah. Off the bat, we're going to set aside $1.25 million.
$1.25 million.
That's right. And then anything beyond that, we might be able to do more. It just depends, obviously. And then, the other thing that we try and do is, look, you're going to get punched in the face. That's how startups go. We think we have product market fit. We think we're on the right direction. And then it takes longer, right? We don't get our 3x a year growth. Something goes wrong. We're going to need, another 18 months, another 2 years to figure it out. Well, that's where the 1.25 also comes into play, because if we still believe, you still believe, we're gung-ho, like that's the lead of a seed extension, right? And that's actually turned into product market fit for several of our companies. I know a lot of people will say no seed extensions, but if we have deep belief, these are like 10-year overnight successes, right? It just takes so long for a startup to actually work. And it's so short-sighted for investors to just abandon founders who sometimes it's the first time they've ever managed people. Sometimes it's the first time they've ever shipped a product. We really see people grow over the course of 5. I've been doing investing I'm still a noob.
How many years have you been investing?
Professionally for 8 years.
8 years, yeah. Me too. I'm doing it for like just a couple more years than you, maybe 11, 10 or 11, I guess.
So I'm learning stuff every single day, but...
When we get back from this quick break, I want you to tell me things that you did terribly in the first couple of years that you've now fixed in your game, the leaks in your game as an investor that you've really worked on fixing, and why, when we get back on This Week in Startups. All right, I'm really excited to welcome Twilio back to being a partner here at This Week in Startups. If you don't know them, they're obviously the cloud communication platform that's used by people like Uber or Airbnb, Shopify. I use it at Inside. And they're joining with us here at This Week in Startups to bring their Twilio and SendGrid startup programs to our listeners. Twilio provides you the building blocks for messaging, voice, and video in your web and mobile applications. They are rooted in startup culture, and they are here to help you on your journey. In fact, Twilio's first product roadmap was written on the back of a pizza box back in 2007. And I've had Jeff on the podcast a couple of times. I had the founder and the CEO of SendGrid on the podcast a couple of times. You've seen him on here. So if you want to engage and delight your users while scaling globally, all from one API-powered platform, from SMS to voice. You can even go into WhatsApp now. I didn't know that, actually. That's pretty cool. And, of course, you can do email now that they've acquired SendGrid. You're going to want to use Twilio. I use it. It works great for me at Inside. We do instant alerts and updates. So if you get inside.com/business, we'll send the top 2 or 3 stories to our users by SMS. And now that's becoming one of our main features to get people to pay. And this is where it gets great. And I'm really excited to have Twilio make this offer to you, our listeners here at This Week in Startups. They have an amazing startup program. You know what? Everybody's got a startup program, but you're not going to believe this. They're going to give you $500. They're going to give you $500 in credits right now. Plus, you can get access to webinars made exclusively for startups and the full support of the Twilio Startups team. They're also going to give you $3,000 in SendGrid credits. This is unbelievable. I really am thankful for Twilio for doing this. Go to twiliostartups.com/twist. Twilio, Twilio, startups.com/twist. You have to go there and grab these credits. It's $3,500 waiting there for your startup. And they're doing this because they love the podcast and they want to support it. And they want to support startups because they're big fans of startups. And they're big fans of This Week in Startups, which I appreciate. So get the $3,500 now. Twiliostartups.com/twist. All right, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I hope you and your family are safe. And we're coming out of the pandemic now here in San Francisco. We've been very lucky that people wear masks and have really respected the shelter-in-place rules. And you feel safe going back to work? You feel safe going outside, Garry? How do you feel now as a parent, as a founder, et cetera, about us going back to work? How do you feel?
I mean, we're going to stay whatever Facebook does for their office, we're going to do. And the reality is we're sort of prepared to stay working from home through maybe all of 2021, actually. That's sort of the conversation we're having this morning.
Wow.
Just because we need a vaccine. And, I was just talking with Alexis about this morning. The amazing thing about America is that we are free.
Right.
Like, God bless America. Honestly, I am like so proud to be an American. I'm proud to, be in a place that has freedom. But, the flip side of that is, shoot, how are we going to control a pandemic? And we're going to have another spike. And
it's pretty clear that there will be another spike. The hope is, since young people seem to die very infrequently from this, and with masks and some basic social distancing, I actually believe, and listen, I'm no expert here, but it does seem like the herd immunity, or resiliency might be a better term, where, if 25% of New Yorkers have it, and you run into we all know coefficients, like at a certain point, if 25% of people have already installed the Uber app or the Coinbase app or Facebook, you can't get them as new users, so it slows down, right?
Yeah.
And so it does feel like that's happening as well, where not out here, but in New York. So I'm wondering in New York, if people start going back, we might have gotten this completely wrong. We should have sheltered in place anybody at risk. And then, I'm going to sound like a Trumpian here, but it might actually be just a fact that...
That's the argument on Twitter, right? People are drawing very strong lines around...
It's so stupid.
Closed versus not.
Why do you think it's become a political issue when it's just a matter of science and technique? Like, as founders and as investors, we look at this, I assume you look at this way as well, like, well, what's the experiment we can run here? Like, we ran the experiment in New York where people have a subway. That didn't work out so well. We ran the experience of total shutdown in San Francisco. That didn't work well for the economy, but sure did work for people not dying. Like, how do you look at the experiment?
That's the trade-off.
Yeah.
I think we just have an incredible amount of anger, frustration, and rightly so, because, we are here and we're privileged. We have incredible privilege to be able to do our jobs without really in effect. We can be as effective as knowledge workers as we were before. But a lot of people can't, and a lot of people aren't, and a lot of people don't have jobs. So I really do feel that level of pain out there.
Yeah.
And then the difficulty is it's very natural for humans to take that frustration and put it into, they have to sublimate it into other things, whether it's shouting at each other in, I'm sure you've seen videos of people shouting at each other, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, if everyone could just take a breath and realize, hey, we're all human beings. We're sort of heroes of our own story, certainly.
Yeah.
We have to make space for each other as heroes here. I think it goes to politics. It goes to people freaking out about masks or not wearing masks, refusing to wear masks. Sort of both sides just get so dug in. It's
such a simple solution. Like the police officers who are like dragging people to the ground and jumping on their backs because they're not wearing a mask. You could simply hand a person a mask, and I've said it on the podcast 10 times, and say, oh, I'm sorry, you forgot your masks? Here's a complimentary one. I'd hate to have to give you a $500 ticket for not putting this on.
Right.
The same way a cop pulls you over and is like, hey, did you know you were going 75 and a 60, a 55? Like, I'd hate to give you a ticket. Should I give you a warning this time? And like, it kind of works, right? Like, you get pulled over by the cops and they let you go. Yeah. You probably don't speed, for 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever it happens to be. And it's
you can do that in South Korea because there's societal cohesion, and you can do that in Sweden because there's societal cohesion, but they're also basically societies made up of people who are very similar to each other.
Right.
And we are a very diverse society. So that's why it's so much harder.
Right.
And I think that's, part and parcel with the diversity.
The diversity is a strength, because we get all these different viewpoints. We have this very rich fabric in the country of 50 different states. But boy, is it difficult to get everybody on the same page, especially when the president is, kind of the opposite of Bush or Obama, who were trying to bring everybody to the center and say, hey, Clinton as well would fall into this. Hey, we're all in this together. We're going to solve 9/11 together. We're going to solve the Great Recession together. And now it feels like not to make this political, but I don't think Trump wants to make, everybody solve this together, nor do I think the left wants to solve it together. They seem to want to, blame Trump for it and, shelter in place indefinitely. And your point about how privileged we are to work as knowledge workers and then tell people whose businesses are about to go out of business. They can't go to their pizzeria. They can't go to their dry cleaner. They have to shelter in place. That's just ridiculous, right? Like, especially if it's a young person. If a young person wants to take the risk and go out, I don't see how we should be able to stop them. I mean, unless the ICUs were overwhelmed, which does make total sense.
Yeah, I think that's how we think about it. If we're knowledge workers and we can be as good as we were before, then we probably should stay in, simply because that are not becomes some are not that an essential worker or someone else who has a business that has to happen physically, they can't do the same business. Like, they can go and do their business. Right. And if I open my doors and I start taking pitches in person, that's contributing to like the commons problem, right? This is a problem of the commons. Right. And, I don't want to be a part of the tragedy of the commons.
Right. So if you can stay home and you go to less Warriors basketball games, I know the Warriors need to make money too, and there are people who work there too. But, if you can take yourself out of the, virality of this, that helps everybody. It makes total sense. Let's go back to the original question, which I teased, which was, you're in year 8 now. You guys are, I think, on your 3rd fund, maybe. Yeah. What have you learned about yourself as an investor? Your own blind spots, things you say, hey, I could get better at this. I need to be better at that.
Well, I've always been known as a super, super nice guy, and I'm happy with that. I want to do business that way. But we've definitely had to learn the hard way that percentage ownership matters a lot, actually. And, you know what? We're worth it, actually.
Right.
Like, we're going to go to bat. So there's that. That's probably the number one thing that I had to learn, going from, writing small angel checks to growing up as an institutional fund. Look, like, we're going to do a lot. And, the resources that my LPs have given me allow me to hire great people on, I can hire Kim Cutler, who used to work at TechCrunch, and she is amazing at policy. Like, she's the one who told me that COVID was going to hit in February, you know, her and Balaji, right? Yeah. And so, there are people on my team who, they're worth it. We're going to go to bat, but, as a result, we actually need to be partners on the cap table, because that's how we actually provide that value back to our LPs.
So you can't be a 2% owner. You got to be a 10% owner or a 20% owner. What do you
10
think?
to 15.
10 to 15. That's exactly what I'm going for. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all learned the same lesson, which is, you and I have many billion-dollar companies
that we put 25 or 50K into, and it's not meaningful. Right? Exactly.
I mean, it is, but then it isn't, right?
It is for an individual. It is not for an LP.
Exactly.
And you need to get to, we have one that's a unicorn that we have substantial ownership in, which would be Calm, which we own 5 or 6% of.
It's a great one.
Which is a great one. And it's just, but, it would have been nice to own 15% of that one. But now we're correcting that with Fitbod, Steezy, other things. We're trying to get to that 10, 15% ownership. And that seems to be also sustainable. You can maintain that percentage. If they raise another 10 million, well, you need only be 1 million of that, or 1.5 million of that round. So in terms of being a nice guy, getting run over and getting your allocation crammed down because other VCs came in swinging their elbows, or later round saying, you have to give up your pro rata. What do you say? And have people tried to take your pro rata away from you? And what have you done when that happens? Good question. You can tell me the truth. Tell it raw. I'll tell it raw too. You just don't have to say the name of the person who's so offensive that they tried to take it away. But this is a legit issue for guys like us, I think.
I think the good thing is being a brand means that, hey, people can be long-term greedy this way.
Yep.
So that, we're going to be around this year, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and we have long memories.
Right. But you've had people try to take your pro rata, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
How often does that happen? Out of 10 deals, how often do you get asked as a seed stage investor to give up your pro rata?
What's interesting is most of the time it's actually YC taking their programmatic pro rata, and they've actually stepped that back. So that's actually worked out really well.
Explain
I think that's the right move.
They were trying to maintain their 7% indefinitely.
That's right.
Which seems reasonable. It's not reasonable?
It is. But the interesting thing was I actually raised that fund.
Oh, you raised the continuation fund?
I raised the first couple $100 million of the YC Continuity Fund. So it was
Willett
interesting
Advisors,
to see.
right? That was the big
Yeah.
LP. Yeah.
So
Mike Bloomberg. People don't know that, I guess, that he was the anchor for that.
Yeah. So great LPs. This is what great institutional LPs get to do, right?
Yeah. And so now they're saying they're going to do it on a case-by-case basis instead of blindly, because they were just doing it blindly. You raise a round, we take our pro rata. Now they're saying they're going to look at it and examine it, right?
I don't know exactly. I think they're still going to take partial, and that still makes sense. But, for too long, it was definitely difficult for people who didn't get their percentage ownership and the seed. And then as things take off in the A, it's like, that's the round you want to be in too. And I think that they've made the right moves.
What's the worst behavior you've seen in this regard to people trying to elbow you and other seed investors out? Tell us the story without saying the names. Take us through it, and then how you tell that person they got to step back or not.
I guess we just sort of point at all the things that we did to get to there. And, often what we'll do is we're the ones who introduced the founder to that VC. So that's where I think there is sort of a white glove aspect to this business. You just got to look them in the eye and you just know, hey, we're both going to be in this business for a while. So let's make money.
So we're taking our pro rata. Thank you. We're not stepping back. But, if we were going to give up our pro rata, we would love to give it to you. But no, it's our fund.
Yeah. And, I think that one of the things that we can do pretty straightforward for some of the companies is, hey, just look at the stuff we did for you. And a lot of founders, they're generally really, really grateful, honestly.
Hey, everybody. Well, as you know, it's 2020. And if you're still using one of these big wireless providers, have you asked yourself, what exactly are you paying for? Well, you're probably paying for all these expensive retail stores that they have and all these inflated prices and the hidden fees. You get these bills from these large, big wireless companies and you're shocked, right? I know I am. They take advantage of you because they know you need your mobile phone and they know you need data services. Well, if there's one thing we learned about the D2C revolution, and we talk about it here on the podcast all the time, direct to consumer, it's that companies like Warby Parker or Casper or Dollar Shave Club, they all made better products and they saved consumers money. And this is the magic of direct to consumer. Well, what if that existed for mobile services? It does today. Mint Mobile is a new way for you to buy wireless service for your phone and for your tablet. It provides the same premium network coverage that you're already using, but at a fraction of the cost. No retail locations, no hassle, and everything's digital. You can just do everything online as you're supposed to. So all of those savings are passed directly on to you and I. Mint Mobile will cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month. You're never going to pay for unused unlimited data again, and you get to choose a plan, 3, 8, or 12 gigabytes of 4G LTE data, and you can upgrade it at any time. They make it easy peasy, and every plan comes with unlimited nationwide talk and text, as you would expect. So you keep your same phone number, you keep your same phone, you keep all your contacts, you just get a new SIM card, boop, pop it in, and you're spending $15 a month instead of 10 times that, 5 times that you're currently paying. They flipped the model on its head. There is no catch here. They are just a consumer-centric mobile company. So ditch your old wireless bill and start saving money with Mint Mobile today. Here's your call to action to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free. Go to mintmobile.com/twist. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/twist. Go ahead, do it right now. You're going to thank me later. All right, let's get back to this amazing episode. Yeah, it's never the founder who wants to have the earlier investors get screwed. It's the later stage investor saying, hey, screw your existing investors. They're lucky to be along for the ride. We take everything in this round. And what I always tell founders is, I tell them on the way in now, by the way, here's something you can expect. We're going to invest in the company. You're going to meet a lot more people. We have a brand name. We're going to introduce you to a bunch of people. And at some point, some downstream investor is going to ask you to screw us. And what I want you to understand is those are bad actors who eventually, if they succeed in screwing us, there's only one more person left to screw in the stack. That's you. And so it's a good indication if they want to screw the person who brought the deal to them and helped the deal get through year 1 or 2, if they want to screw that person, they will have no problem screwing you, the founder. And boy, does that work as like a little inoculation. That's my vaccine. That's my way of inoculating the founders to it. And boy, it does happen on a pretty regular basis. And I tell people I've had it happen 3 times, I think, in the last 5 years. I tell people straight up, because I'm not a nice guy, as you know. Like, I'm a full contact guy. I'm like a barbarian. I just tell them, if you want, no, we don't give up our parade. They're like, well, we're not going to, I had one person say, we're not going to do the deal if we can't hit this ownership principle. I said, let me explain something to you. I am the point guard, and I am world-class all-star point guard with many championships. I will never pass you the ball again. And not only will I not pass the ball to you, this is what I told one of the most famous VCs in the world. Like, when I say top 3, I mean top 3 in terms of the name of the person. If I said their first name, I didn't have to say their last name. Put it that way. And I said to him, I said, listen, beep. Not only am I never sending you a company again, I know that these 3 competitors of yours are the ones that you compete most violently with.
Yeah.
I'm sending them proactively to those 3 going forward. And you can be certain I'll hit another Robinhood, Uber, or Calm, or Thumbtack, and you will not even know that I told them that I am not a fan of your firm. And this person was like, you're insane. And I was like, yes, I am. Like, type Calacanis insane into fucking Google. Yes. How dare you try to roll over the existing investors? And this firm, I should say, changed their position on this. But that was their initial
Thanks
position.
For fighting the good fight.
Well, I mean, I find it ridiculous for these folks to think the people who did the hard work of, the first year or 2, it's really hard work. Like, why would you want to screw those people just to make an extra? What is the actual incremental they're getting?
Yeah.
We're talking
That's
about
a tricky thing, because it's I had a tweet recently about this where it's really long duration is one of the main ways to get smarter, right?
Explain.
And so just literally, if you're in it for longer than everyone else, then people can't screw you like this, right? And there are a lot of people in venture broadly who are sort of they want their $1 billion exit, and then they got their home, they're gone. They're not going to work again. People treat this business kind of like a lottery ticket.
Yes,
and that's really wrong.
It is interesting. Yeah.
The good thing is, this is where my argument, hey, we're going to be around this year, next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Do you want to burn this bridge? Because, we could probably make a lot of money together, but if that's how you want to play it, then that's how you want to play it, right?
Yeah, people don't normally see this kind of, sharp-elbowedness until people like us bring it up. But it used to be, the expectation was you will get screwed. I don't know if you saw the Giphy tweet storm, but an angel investor who had invested through one of the platforms, $2,500, never got an update from the Giphy founders, never got an update on their investment for 5 years or something. They see the $400 million sale and they still don't know if they made any money.
Yeah.
And they probably are going to make very little because there was a $100 million overhang or something. So who knows what exactly happens. What did you think? Speaking of outliers, you and I spent some time on the House Party. Explain to people why House Party has such strong product venture capitalist fit.
Clubhouse, you mean?
Clubhouse. What did I say?
House Party.
House Party. No, that's different.
House Party is the one where I went on. I logged in once, and they were like, "The old guy, get off. Old guy, log out. Don't
old
be here."
Old guy at 40? Are you even 40 yet, Garry?
I think I was 36 when I logged into
How old are you
House
now?
Party the first time. I'm 39.
You'll be 40. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's wild.
It's pretty wild.
But Clubhouse, credit
Clubhouse,
to Paul and Rohan, honestly.
Yeah,
Credit
pretty amazing. But why does it have product venture capitalist fit? There's so many venture capitalists inside of it, investors, and they're so addicted to it that I said, this is the greatest example of product venture capital fit I've seen since Lux or Uber, for that matter.
Yeah.
Because, VCs would take Lincoln Town Cars. They wouldn't take taxi cabs. So they understood Uber immediately, right? It was they were the first users. Here, it seems like the first users of this platform are founders and more often than not investors. Why does it appeal so much to investors, you think?
I mean, it still feels like Foo Camp, or South by, South by behind the velvet ropes in the VIP room.
Yeah.
So the exclusivity is actually what makes that community work really well. And you're going to see the next step for that company really will be, can they open up and have the type of incredible long-term cohorts? What you need is sort of the long-term asymptote for your long-term retention. And theirs was off the charts. It's just, Facebook level, right?
Right.
But with 1,600 users. So the real challenge will be, how do you go from there to 10,000 users, 100,000 users? And you probably, I'm just spitballing, but my sense, if I were Paul, and, I'm very envious of that position, because being able to create a social network from scratch, it's like I would undo all of my mistakes from Posterous because we had a shot, I think that's a challenge. Can you have an invite system that is almost as white glove as what Paul does when you first join that platform? Your friend comes in and introduces you to their friends. What is it like to be at a great party? That has to be the replicated product experience over and over again.
Is that even possible? Has that ever happened in the history of social media where a white glove service was able to continue like that? The only thing I can think of is Superhuman that maintains that onboarding effect.
Yeah,
the
and
VIP.
you have to pay for that, right? So can a free social network do it?
No, absolutely not.
We'll see. Yeah. How about this? What if you had an invite system that only gave you more invites if your previous invites converted? So they have to log in on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
So it is a little bit of the modern version of the Ponzi scheme but not for dollars, for engagement.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. People don't remember, but Gmail was just a crazy innovative product when it emerged 20 years ago, I think. And the whole concept behind Gmail was they gave you 2 invites. And people were like, oh, I only have 2 invites. You really thought about, how, does my mom need one, or my brother, or my spouse? Like, you don't want to waste them.
eBay.
Or selling them on eBay. People were doing that and flipping them. And here, that's actually a really interesting way to vector it is.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. If the previous person did that, how soon before Facebook copies the entire format and replicates it?
I'm sure there's a team working on it right now.
What does that make you think of Facebook as an organization, or Zuckerberg as a founder?
I mean, we felt the same way about Microsoft back in the day. It's like, Bill Gates has always been legendary. We always looked up to him, but there's a real stifling force to innovation. I think the difference here is it's much harder to do that in social. I realize that the reason why there's a buzz about Clubhouse is people talk about Clubhouse the way they talk about discovering the Beatles. And they're like, I found it first, right?
Right.
Before it goes mainstream. And there's a cachet in that. And people actually think about these consumer social teams in that same way. I mean, I think Posterous for a time was like, because I was on your podcast with Michael Arrington, and Mike actually launched us on TechCrunch and left it up like the top story all weekend, like 48 hours on TechCrunch.
And what do you get? 10,000 people, 20,000 people signed up?
Yeah, it was 10,000 signups, which is, what you get now when you're top of Product Hunt, which is,
by the way, that is escape velocity. When you think about it, like if the product does have product market fit, getting to 10,000 is enough. That's enough to, if just 5% of those users stick around, now you got 500 people who can actually make it happen. Did you try to get that Series A? Were you able to make any headway with Clubhouse? I tried to invest, and obviously, Andreessen coming over the top for $100 million. Don't need my.
I'll just put it as we really
100K.
like that team. They were great. I think Andrew is a great partner there, and Andrew's a good friend of ours, and we love Andreessen. So it's a great get. They have amazing things. Wind at their back. COVID, you couldn't ask for a better reason to exist. And they have incredible user base.
Should it have been 100 million? Is that just ridiculous for a service with 1,600 people?
Not to get all crypto on it, but money printer go burr, right? So what is a dollar, and what is the nature of your financial reality? Do you ever question the nature of your financial reality? Is Joe Rogan worth $100 million over 5 years?
You would argue if he's getting 10 million people per episode to watch each episode over time, that you could actually make you could quantify the value. Like I said in the early when we were talking about it, If 5% of his viewers convert and he's got 50 million viewers a year, it's 2.5 million. If he's got 10 million viewers, it's 500,000. If they stay for 3 years, it's paid for itself. So there is actually, you could actually compute it. In this case, you have 1,600 people. It basically means you're paying, whatever it is, $700,000 a person for active users, which makes no sense since it's a free product.
Unless it becomes Twitter.
Unless it becomes Twitter.
And so, if it does, then that's the bet. That's how you square the
Would
circle.
you make that bet? If they said to you, listen, Gary, we love you more than anybody. If you give us $5 million at the top of your range, at 100 million, we'll give you 5% of the company. Would you make that bet? At $100 million valuation. At a 50, I know the answer is yes. Right? Safe to assume at 50, you would have done it.
If you're going to do 50, then 100 is actually not that far off.
So would you have done it at 50 then? And
you put me on the hot seat, man.
Well, I'm not asking you if you offered 50. I'm asking if you would have. But based on that pause, you would have. Yes. Okay. So that's where, here's my thinking on it. I would have certainly done it at 30 or 40 because, you're paying a 5x premium, a 10x premium. Who cares? There's obviously something very special here about it, right? And something very unique. And then I was like, yeah, no, I would never have invested in 100. Then I rethought that and I was like, you know what? If they said to me right now, hey, we have 200K you could put in, you can own 20 basis points of it or whatever it is. I would say yes, only because Andreessen Horowitz now has so much reputation on the line to make this work, having made such an outlandish bet. Or, outlandish outlier, let's say. I don't want to charge language too much here, but it is an outlier for sure. They are going to be super motivated to make it work. And boy, Ben Horowitz's wife has been holding court every night on it. And they're pulling out every stop in the Andreessen Horowitz arsenal to get this going.
I wish them super well. And, dude,
what do you think of the $2 million secondary?
Well, when you look at Rohan and you look at... he has a sick kid, so
I think that does mitigate it. I changed my position on it. Yeah. So one of the two founders has a sick child who has a very serious illness, and so the $1 million for each founder, you couldn't give it to one and not the other, and then giving $1 million to somebody with a sick kid who's going to be pursuing this and probably needs a little bit. It doesn't seem as outrageous given that mitigating factor. Yeah,
look, the reality for every founder, every person in our capitalist system is that the first few $1 million in your bank account, it's going to sound like crazy privilege, but, I grew up without a lot of money and sometimes food insecure. And, I know what it's like to sort of be face to face with not having money and,
What was it like?
Sometimes being worried that, are you going to eat tomorrow, right?
What was that like for you?
I was a kid, so
how old were you?
I was just trying to 12, 14.
12 or 14 and didn't know if there would be food on the table.
Well, my mom worked at a nursing home as a nurse assistant, and there were days where she'd have to go and get bread from, someone would come to the nursing home and deliver a bag of expired bread to the back of the nursing home, and that would be how we ate that week.
Expired food, yeah. That'll get me.
I understand that. I can recall that, and I can go back to that moment at any time. And there are real times when I was 22, Stanford graduate, and I had that in the back of my head. And in retrospect, that made me take less risk and
the fear.
Yeah, the fear, right? And, that's a real thing. And it's a really important moment when someone's made something to be able to take a little bit off the table. And then that lets you swing for the fences. I'll tell you, Chris Sacca let me do that with Posterous. He brokered a deal that let me get married to my wife because
You're kidding. He let you sell some secondary?
Yeah, it was, enough to pay for a wedding, So, and I'll always be thankful to him for that.
It's a nice aspect to the ecosystem. It was something that I believe at the time when you were doing Posterous, I think Fred Wilson, also Ron Conway, a lot of people were very concerned about it. You remember this debate of secondary is going to kill venture? Why did that? Tricky. Why is it tricky? Why did people feel that way? And why have we worked out some sort of equilibrium on this issue where it's not controversial, except maybe in an outlier case like Clubhouse?
I mean, having been in those shoes, it matters a lot, right?
To have that
it's easy,
little bit of cash.
It's easy to forget, right? At some, you hear very successful people who are our peers, like I'm sure like the two of us have even said this, like we just use money as a way to keep score.
Right.
But for the majority of people in society, that's not true at all.
No, they use money to put food on the table, literally.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean,
exactly.
I had moments where our family was negative and in danger of, we lost the business, and my mom also a nurse and in danger of going bankrupt, and my dad almost going to jail because he couldn't pay his taxes. Like, these were very acute things that, in my mind, that's why I asked you, like, how did it affect you, that fear? Because I had that fear for a long time.
Oh, I still have that fear, which is very irrational. And,
you have that fear still of losing everything and having no money.
And it's very irrational, right?
Completely irrational now.
But it's in the background, right?
It's
and
an
I don't think you ever lose it.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to truly forget.
I have not lost it, but it definitely has not manifested itself as acutely now, because when I was younger, I was like, I have to get money and power quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was, in your case, you mentioned it was a fear. For me, it was a fear that led me, I think, to be hyper aggressive and cutthroat in, I have to get money and power as quickly as possible before this all collapses and burns around me.
Yeah.
That was actually my mindset for a long time. Like, I was like a gladiator who this is why the movie Gladiator is my favorite film, and along with Blade Runner, and like I resonated with so much, because I felt my whole life I was a moment away, like a gladiator in a ring, from dying. So I just had to put my best fight on the table every time. Every time out, I had to fight to the death. That's probably why I had a weird reputation in the industry, because everybody's like, why is this guy fighting on him for every single point of contention? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you make some money, it does take that away. But it hasn't gone away for you. You're still thinking about it once in a while.
I mean, I'm able to...
You're aware of it.
Look down and look around, and I can, put everything in perspective, but way back in the background, right? You wake up and you're like, it's actually okay, right? But, and then where it really matters for me is like, I want people to create wealth.
Yes.
I want people to be able to create wealth. I know that that's the core of what you're doing too. And I think that's why I'm, actually a venture capitalist, is I actually want to find people who are just like me, who experience this, but are capable of sitting down in front of a computer making a thing for 1 billion people. And, there's a way out, right?
It's exhilarating to think that a person coming from nothing can sit behind a keyboard and make something that changes the world and changes their fate, and yes, makes them wealthy. Why do people hate the rich now? Why is it that when we were growing up, people wanted successful people to exist in the world, and we're rooting for them to succeed and rooting for them to become wealthy and famous, and we almost were excited for Bill Gates to become a billionaire. We were excited to see Jeff Bezos win. It was exciting, and now it's abhorrent. What's happened? Where do we go wrong?
I mean, the wealth inequality has been pretty insane, and that's structural and sort of almost a salient feature of fiat currencies. So that's where we're at, right? Unprecedented wealth inequality. And
well, explain what that means in terms of the fiat and currencies, and why this is a feature of the system, maybe not a bug. Or maybe it is a bug. I don't know if you feel it's a feature or a bug, but why does this system we have set up create this possibility?
I actually first heard about this problem when I was working at Palantir, working on hedge fund software for Peter Thiel's hedge fund. And one of the books they made us all read was this book called The Dollar Crisis, which is actually a really interesting book. The other one that everyone knows to read is The Sovereign Individual, obviously. But between those two books, you get actually a really interesting view on what is a dollar, and did it mean something before, and what does it mean now? And the really interesting feature of fiat currency is that it is not backed by anything. And that was true up until really normalization of relations with China, and then Nixon taking us off of the gold standard. Not saying that we need to go back on the gold standard, but this is historical. Suddenly the US dollar was the reserve currency for all of the other nations. That's how we do our trade. People buy oil in dollars. And honestly, the US is massively the beneficiary of being able to print as many of those as possible. And if anything, we're in the middle of such a crisis that, hey, let's print more. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, actually a really strange situation to be in. We want more money printing right now because that's actually staving off what could have been a worse Great Depression than the Great Depression.
Yeah, it's easy to be cynical about those $1,200 checks or whatever it was, or raising the unemployment 50%, whatever the basic was, 200 to 600, depending on state you're in, making it whatever, 500 to 800. These things seem like small things, but they're big swings when you think of the tens of millions of people receiving them. And you would agree the standard for the entire world, though, has gone up. So we have, in some way, an optics problem for entrepreneurship and the polarization of wealth. People are looking at the example of Jeff Bezos and saying the entire system is broken when they don't look at, oh my God, look at all of the jobs created in the world. And that before COVID, we were at record unemployment at a time when they told us automation was going to lead to massive depression era unemployment. And it never happened. And the opposite happened. So strange, right?
Yeah. And there are all sorts of crazy macro effects from the printing of money and just, look at every growth stage company with the crazy valuations, WeWork and others, SoftBank Vision, all of these things are connected to just this idea that dollars are seeking yield at all costs. And the only pure yield there is what happens with our portfolio companies and some of the other ones too. But some of them are they just look like the other stuff. They look like what could provide yield. And that's the difficult thing about late stage valuations today. Theranos is in there too.
Yeah, you have Theranos or Fab.com, which was an interesting startup that went to $1 billion. I knew somebody who had like 5% ownership of that. And, they're buying NetJet cards thinking that they hit the lottery, and they couldn't. They were basically in a position where that went to zero before anybody was able to sell any shares. Are you a believer in UBI? Do you think that giving people some base amount of compensation or money each month would give them the ability to be more entrepreneurial? Do you think it will create sloth and people will not be motivated to have purpose and, create opioid abuse and, people just giving up on going to work? Because I see coming out of this COVID that there are people who are just saying, you know what, staying home is easier. And it's easier for me to just stay home and maybe I won't go back into the workforce. It's too hard.
Yeah.
What do you think of UBI? I'm curious your take. I never got your take on it.
My more hopeful view is that things like Patreon could exist, but for all things. So Patreon is that platform that actually supports creators, and they support incredible creators who get to basically self-actualize by, humming show tunes and all kinds of stuff on YouTube. They're creating, right? Yeah. And they're living their best lives, and I think that that's really important. That's the good version of it, right?
Yeah.
And the tricky thing is, I'm not an economist, and so I probably don't know enough to weigh in one way or another. It sounds like a promising experiment. Things like Give Directly actually were illegal, I've learned, in the United States, but are suspended during a pandemic. So that's an interesting experiment.
Giving directly.
There's a nonprofit called Give Directly that literally just gives money to people, initially in Africa, and they're starting to do some more operations here in the United States.
They're just like, screw it. We don't need to have like some big, bake off to who should get the money, some big thinking through or scholarship process. Just give everybody a little bit of money, take the edge off.
And they're going to use it to actually better their situations, right? They're not going to, just drink it away. They're actually going to make capital improve. They're going to be rational, self-interested actors generally, right? There will be extreme cases of people not using it properly, but, by and large, people are, smart. They're actually, they're trustworthy with money, and they're going to try to invest it, especially if you give it to the woman.
It turns out, women actually are better stewards of capital than men. Yeah, I think if you're actually worrying about it getting blown on booze and beer, I think giving it to women would probably have a better outcome than just giving it to guys who maybe don't think this through as well. I think we can say that. How's Instacart done during all this chaos? I know you're an early investor in Instacart. How are they doing through the pandemic? I know that their service went 10x or 3x, who knows what it is.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I use it all the time, and we're really thankful for it because, shoot, it's just, less. I can use it with my parents. They're still in Fremont. I know my wife's using it with her parents, and I think it's been really, really great.
Yeah. And what do you think about the profitability of that sector? Can it be profitable? Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Instacart. People have been talking and a lot of hand-wringing around, hey, is this delivery ever going to be profitable, or is it just a venture-backed competition that's causing it to be unprofitable? How do you think about that and capital's role in it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the models, and the reality is, and the thing that people aren't talking about that they should be, is density. So these models are highly unprofitable when you start off, and they become very profitable once you have density. And density is a function of how much money you have for CAC and
customer acquisition
retention,
cost,
right? Yeah, for customer acquisition cost and long-term value, right? So this is a little bit of a spreadsheet exercise, but and this is the hard part about being a startup founder. Like, you are actually running almost a scientific experiment, and you have to, work towards the metrics. And the best companies out of this space will be profitable, and they will be really great businesses. But as competition is the enemy of profitability.
Yeah, especially when there's unlimited capital in the world, and Masayoshi-san or whoever is deciding, hey, I'm just going to give money to Uber and to DoorDash, and you have the same investor giving money to two parties. I think he might also be. Is he also in Instacart?
Yeah. The interesting thing is Masayoshi-san's part of his plan is actually to buy large chunks of competing different concerns and then have them not compete.
Right.
It's what he did with telecoms back in the 90s. So this is something that has happened in the past that will continue to happen.
Yeah, so maybe he'll tell DoorDash, hey, and Uber. I know he was pushing Uber to buy DoorDash at some point. Now Uber's looking at Grubhub. It might be a better deal for them. Do you think that that government should be trying to regulate the food delivery business at this early stage? And do you think that, why are people thinking that these are predatory services if they're still losing money? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's tough. Some of this is mixed up with the politics around how is tech being perceived, certainly in certain local jurisdictions, like in San Francisco. And I think it's tough. Like, I grew up in tech. I grew up in the Bay Area in tech. And so tech is actually what got me in to, it changed my life, right? It gave me the privilege that I have now. And that's the difficult thing, being caught between that, because I see both sides, right? All the people who I grew up with, they either work in tech or they left, right? And that's the tension. And you have a lot of people who have been here for 30, 40 years. They're the beneficiary of incredible amounts of wealth creation in their home. And that's been protected by Prop 13, which means they can stay there forever. And I think that that's actually really good these are retarees. These are people who don't have a lot of free income. Their
tax basis doesn't get raised. So if their home value, if they bought their home for $50,000 in the 70s and it's now worth $2 million, they're paying tax on $50,000, not $2 million.
And that's the unintended consequence, which is then you have people who their entire net wealth is in their home.
Right.
And do you want more building? If you build a duplex or triplex that makes space for millennials, or makes space, like, unfortunately, the only people who can actually afford it because there's no building is tech people. And so then you connect, do we make space for young people? No, they're only tech people. We hate tech people, right? It's just this straight line between personal interest and hatred of a group.
Which is really weird. The people who you really, it's what they really should do is have some kind of, maybe it's like a trailing 20-year tax thing. So, if you bought your home in 1970, and it's 1990, you're paying 1980s taxes, right? So you get a 20-year mulligan or something, or a 30-year mulligan on your house, which would be the equivalent of when you stop working and you have the 30-year retirement, right? You could come up with something reasonable where, anybody who's got a home that's that much older could move on. But it just seems to me like, for this city to be anti-tech now, when Twitter and Square just said, we're a work from home first company. Not you have that option. We're work from home first. Commercial real estate in San Francisco is going to go down. What percent do you think?
What's tough is I think the big ones are going to leave, and I did a quick survey on my Twitter, and only 20% of people said they were going totally remote. 70% said they were hybrid. So
what do you think that number was previous? If you'd done that survey in
5-10% maybe tops.
Exactly.
You know, so
or
I
hybrid,
think that,
or yeah.
I mean, it's been a hot market for a long time, so I think prices will come down, but occupancy, I bet, will actually stay pretty constant. It'll make space for people who are going to stay. So
interesting. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of companies, and they're just like, not renewing our lease. And that to me is like, whoa. So the big companies might not add, maybe they'll sublet on the margins. So you're probably right there. But I just think a lot of these companies are like, you know what? If employees want to work from home and our second line item or third line item is facilities, well,
we can do something about that.
Yeah. People are going to just cut it. And then this is what I think is the route. I'm curious, you think of my theory of like the route out of this, what will be certainly a recession and could be worse. You're a company that has 100 employees. You go full remote. You get rid of your office space costing you $50,000 a month. You say, or you wind up saving $1 million a year on that. Okay, well, that's like 7, 8, 9, 10 people, highly paid 6-figure salaries, 10 people making 100,000 that you could add, or you could just be more profitable. You could throw $1 million to the bottom line. Then you stop having to pay the San Francisco premium, which was $20K on top of a salary. What do you think, a remote salary? The difference, 20, 30K, 40K?
It might be more.
Might be 50.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah. So if it was 20, 30, 40K extra, now that goes away. And Facebook already said, Zuckerberg said, if you leave San Francisco, we're adjusting your salary down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
I'm curious to see the numbers from that.
That is pretty, Zuckerberg is so hardcore.
Yeah.
He makes everybody else look like softies. He's just like, yeah, no, you can totally work from home. I'm taking back 30% of your salary if you do.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But this to me means companies will be that much more profitable. And that means they will then start investing again, because they'll be sitting there saying, oh, you know what? We cleared $1 million in rent. The next 10 hires cost us 30% less. And 10 people left the company. We reorged during COVID. Now we're like lean and mean. Are you seeing that possibility of like lean?
Well,
mean
the good
companies?
thing is there will still be a marketplace. And so the interesting thing is Facebook is, I think, probably anchoring at that because they know that it'll actually play out in the marketplace. And if, it's not legal for them to talk to the other companies and collude about that. But if they come out and publicly say it, then more of the other companies will choose to do that. And it's actually a form of public collusion, which is kind of interesting.
So I didn't think of it that way. So they come out of the gate and say, we're going to be up to 50%. You can apply to be work from home. But in fairness to people who didn't get the cost of living adjustment that you got moving to San Francisco, if you choose to move out, you're going to lose that cost of living that we gave you coming here, because it would be unfair for the other person living in Tennessee or Austin to not get it.
So the game theory is put it out there and then we'll see if it sticks. If other people adopt it too, it'll stick. And if other people don't, I bet you they get rid of that. They just, it's going to be a market price, whether they're remote or in the Bay Area, either way. And right now it's about what other people are going to do when they go remote. Like
this is like high level gamesmanship with Google, isn't it? And Apple.
Yeah.
They're basically saying like, okay, Google, Apple, because those are two companies that have not been work from home either.
Yeah.
Well,
if they go there, then, they got the stake in the ground, right? And, it's not legal for them to have a email conversation that'll come out in discovery. It's already, that has already happened before.
That happened before.
Big fines for that, right? Yeah. So the only other way you could do it is, publicly do it. Right?
Trial balloon.
That's unassailable, right?
Yeah, it's a trial balloon. It's like, here's what we chose. You choose what you want.
Yeah.
Do you think Google, Facebook, Instagram, let's just go with Google, Facebook, and Uber as outliers. Do you think they could have been built remote and they could have grown to the heights they grew as a remote organization? Or did they need to have that energy in a building somewhere with a hard driving leader to hit those notes? What do you think?
I actually think that you needed Slack and you needed a lot of these tools that actually now enable it. And you just didn't have those tools before. So
yes, if they had those tools, you think it could have been built?
Probably.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. The big unknown is I think it's very easy for a company like Facebook or Twitter to say, hey, we're moving to it when they're in the we're growing 30% year over year phase.
You're scaling.
You're
People
scaling.
know how to do it.
Yeah, people know how to do it. It's not like there's this intensity where we have to beat Friendster and MySpace. We need to be in a war room. And that war room mentality, I think that that's going to be the big unlock is everybody's going to leave San Francisco. Everybody's going to go remote. And then you're going to see this like group of crazies say, we're only hiring in an office. We're going to be here. We're going to do it the old school way. And they're going to just start kicking ass. And maybe then people are like, oh, that's just too much of an advantage for us not to have. Do you think it's an advantage that everybody's in the same room or a disadvantage?
Oh, it's definitely an advantage.
Yeah.
It's definitely unproven yet if you can get to an IPO class company consistently. I think it's possible. It's almost certainly possible. It's just a matter of how much harder it is to actually implement the systems and actually do it. And so I don't think there's absolutes here. But if you have choices, people are just making different choices because they have to make choices. And I think we're going to find out.
Well, that was the question about WordPress. And, I'm a huge fan of Matt Mullenweg's, and somebody was like, listen, they built $1 billion company. And what somebody said, and it was a little bit crass in this conversation, that should have been a $10 billion company. And if it had been a work in the same place, it would have been a 10 billion. And the 37 Signals folks are like, we should have, we're work from home. It's been working for us. But let's face it, Asana became a much bigger company than Basecamp. So I think what these lessons of the people who've done it before have proven is you'll have a happier workforce. You'll have an easier life. You will have a smaller outcome. That's, I think, what the lesson will ultimately be. And I think you're right. The jury's still out on, can you build let's call it a $10 billion company, a $100 billion company in this regard? Do you think people working from home give up opportunity if the CEO and the management team are in a central headquarters? In other words, they're out of sight, they're out of mind, they're just not going to have the same opportunity.
I mean, I think that's why hybrid is actually the hardest possible way to do it.
Explain.
It's way better to be perfectly in one location where everyone has a level playing field, or perfectly remote where everyone has a level playing field. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we funded Around like 2 years ago. We didn't know that COVID-19 was going to happen. Around, for the people who don't know, is a Zoom competitor that's built specifically for hybrid teams. So you can actually open your laptop and your designer sitting right next to you will open their laptop. It puts you in a session automatically. You click that link over to someone else, and there you have 3 little chat heads of you talking and collaborating over a document, a design, whatever you need.
And it can be persistent, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The whole idea is that it should be as easy to jump into one of these sessions, a Zoom, with, echo termination without sort of the rigmarole of, getting into this. If you can have as easy as tapping on someone's shoulder, impromptu conversations about collaborative docs, then that's actually how you can do hybrid well. And, it's basically power distance, right? If you are remote and you're on Zoom and everyone's looking at a screen, well, in the meeting, they can just read cues and have a much faster conversation. And over there, you're like reading a transcript, right? So actually the medium matters a lot because it sets management sort of distance. I mean, these psychological factors matter a lot in social software, which is kind of obvious at some level, but I think that in social software, we don't think about these simple psychological facts enough.
Yeah, it definitely is going to take a major adjustment. I don't know if you saw like the Away founder was derided because she was like hardcore. And I was like, you know what? Just looking at the transcripts of what she said, if somebody said those out loud in person, they would not seem horrible. They seem maybe crass or curt, maybe curt is the right word, in a Slack room. And it's almost like, the Away founder maybe needs to, like, as people call it, the ish sandwich, say something nice, say something that needs to be improved, i.e. criticism, and then say something nice. And literally, like, if you just do that on Slack, hey, great job on X, terrible job on Y, good job on Z, you can like literally avoid half the problem. Is like,
yeah, totally.
Just some basic, level
Management
setting.
Is the little things. They don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel.
It is true. Like literally that there is nothing truer than that. And I think for this next generation, they have a different view of work. What do you think? Like you're the tail end of Gen Z, but you're of Gen X. but you're investing in Gen Z and millennials.
Yeah, we're sort of right in there.
You're
Gen
right.
Y. I'm Gen Y.
No, you're definitely Gen X. Really? You were born 1980?
I'm the youngest Gen X then, 81.
Yeah, I think you're still Gen X. I think up to 84 is Gen X or something like that. You could.
I'm on the cusp.
You're on the cusp. What do you feel more like? Do you feel more like an alternative Gen Xer or more like
definitely love, some of the Gen X bands a little bit more.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah, let's go with the music part.
I'll go with that. So you like Nirvana or
Nirvana,
Peppers,
Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins, incredible, elite.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'd say most underrated rock band of the last 30 years is definitely Smashing Pumpkins, 100%. Oh, yeah. So you, what do you find in the millennial workforce that's different, if at all, from the approach that we took as Gen Xers who wanted to take our seat at the table and kind of that was enough? Do you feel there's anything different, or do you maybe all these self-selecting founders, they're all the same? They're just founders.
No, it's funny. I actually can't really tell when I talk with people. Sometimes I can't really tell what age they are.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
But, around Y Combinator, we would spend time with 22-year-olds, 27-year-olds, and we'd talk to them all the same. And then the best founders, you wouldn't be able to tell, right? That was actually one of the tests, was the absolute best founders. It doesn't matter what, you might find out later that they were 20 or 22, and you might be surprised by that because, right. You couldn't tell what their age was. So the best founders are sort of like that. It sort of doesn't matter.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. I think if you look at founders, they just self-select for people who want to change the world and who are driven. And so you don't get this millennial kind of they're too soft, they're snowflakes kind of thing because they're not part of the millennials. It doesn't work.
As a founder, you end up learning that you have to go after the thing that actually works. And there are lots of things that don't work, that, they don't give you the outcome that you want. And if it doesn't work, then the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so the sooner people realize, the better, honestly.
All right, we're sitting here a year from now. What's our conversation going to be looking back at this time?
Oh, man. Hopefully we have a vaccine.
That would be great. That would be truly great.
Things are sort of returning to normal, right? It's to me, it's I hope the money printers work.
Mm. So all this stimulus we're putting in actually amounts to something other than just debt.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch the PPE loans and all this stuff. It feels like the government did. This is the thing that's confounding about our federal government. It seems like they were able to so quickly send money to companies. I saw a bunch of companies getting PPE, this payroll protection stuff, and these other loans in 3 weeks, and then we can't get the country to wear masks, or we can't get testing done. And it's we can really mobilize, I think it was $500 billion in loans and, trillions in stimulus overall. They really moved quickly with the money printing, but they couldn't get consensus around testing or masks. So weird.
Yeah.
I can't understand.
I would argue that it's the filter bubble, right? Our societies are becoming a lot less intermingled, and the result is you hang out with basically hang out with people who are just like you all day. And actually, the only interaction sometimes people have, especially right now because we're all locked in or in shelter in place, is that meeting people who we disagree with on Twitter or Facebook comments.
And now the solution on Twitter is now you can write a post, and this was actually my idea from 5 years ago. I wrote a blog post about it. What if you could tweet and only your followers could reply? People you follow, or people you follow, as opposed to people you're following could reply. And they just launched it, and I thought to myself, oh no, what a bad suggestion I made. The best part of Twitter is getting challenged by people who disagree with you.
Yeah.
So now
it's going to change it a lot. It's going to be an interesting effect.
What's going to happen, you think? It's just going to get boring?
We're going to be a lot more in our echo chambers, and that'll make us feel safe. Maybe a lot of us need to feel safe right now, especially people who have a lot of followers. But, honestly. It might be an engagement hack. They might be finding they have to do it, and that's probably what their tests are showing them.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if the experience of people who tweet the most degrades a lot, engagement broadly will go down simply because they won't tweet as much. And that's a spiral that you don't want on a social network like that.
So when you tweet, you get pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Therefore, you don't tweet.
I think a lot of people have stopped tweeting simply because of that, right? It's
right.
a lot more intense, a lot more anonymous accounts, and
bots are just brutal.
Yeah,
they're just brutal. They just I went to the YouTube comments on a CNBC hit recently, and I was delighted at the level of the discourse. And then
YouTube comments is actually a little better now.
You literally. It's the flippening, right? We had the flip. It's a flippening of Twitter was the intelligent discussion. YouTube was the trolls and chaos, where they were just like, screw that fat guy, screw that fat Greek, screw that Asian guy, fuck him, it was just literally personal attacks on how you looked. How literally people were like, fuck Jason Calacanis, that fat Greek. And they're like, Garry Tan, 4 eyes, just literal personal attacks.
I know, it's de-evolved, hasn't it? And this is something that's solvable. Yeah.
Why does Twitter not just solve the bot problem? I should have a button that says, I don't want to see replies, or I don't want reply. The easier button would have been, do not allow replies to people who've been on Twitter for less than X days or years. So I could say, I don't want replies from anybody whose account is under a year old. And so in order to participate with me, you got to be a year old.
Yeah.
Or I follow
Twitter's a public company now, right?
Yeah, and that does change all.
It's actually that much harder to shift something. It has to be existential for a public company to switch on a dime. It's not a startup anymore, and that's why startups can exist.
Exactly. All right, listen, Garry, it's delightful to have you on the pod. You're always interesting. You can follow Garry Tan, that's 2 R's, GarryTan, or his amazing YouTube channel where he's publishing weekly, very beautiful videos. Which is at youtube.com/Garry Tan.
Yep, that's it. And then you can DM me on Instagram for now, as long as I can reply to everyone.
You're encouraging people to slide into your DMs.
Yeah, and I will try and help. Startup advice. It's actually given me a lot of interesting ideas for tweets and episodes. So
that is the
my version of talking to my users.
It is a great way to find out what is a good topic for.
So limited time only. I'd like to keep it open, but Jason tells me it's not possible.
No, you can. It's just people. What you'll find is 1 out of 10 people will berate you for not getting back to them, and then you have to. What I do with that case is I write back, I'm so sorry. I was on deadline for the next book, or I'm so sorry. It's been a little bit crazy for me now. And then they almost universally apologize for flying off the handle.
There's a human being. There's a human being on the other end.
Sometimes people are like, this is the 4th time I've emailed you. And I'm like, okay, you emailed me a list of 4 startup ideas and it's 6,000 words. I have books I need to read. I have books I need to write that are 6,000 words is a big piece of. Come on.
This is where Instagram helps me a lot because there's a character limit.
Is there?
And so people are always trying to say, can I send me a deck? And what I'm saying is, can we just talk about it here? Which is actually a mirror of what a YC interview is like.
The 10-minute rule.
You actually bring down the aperture all the way down, and then you can have a very high bandwidth conversation, and it forces them to be a lot more thoughtful about what they're putting out. And then we can have a conversation. So I think that's an interesting discovery.
But that is the
Instagram.
Number one complaint and bad feeling I've had as I'm not a competitor to YC. We're coexisters. There's too many startups really for it to be competitive. But universally, when people say they went to their YC and they had a bad experience, which typically a bad experience means I didn't get selected. So it's sort of like it would have been a great experience if they were selected, but they say, oh, they didn't understand it. They spoke for 3 or 4 minutes and they didn't understand my idea. I only had 6 minutes. But you're saying the way you guys designed that was to purposely see how they do in just 10 minutes.
Every billion-dollar company that has ever passed through YC passes that test with flying colors. I mean, obviously.
What is the test exactly? Describe the test for me, which is...
in 10 minutes, can I understand? I actually did a YouTube video about this. So, how to ace your YC interview. But high level, it's in 10 minutes, can someone who's reasonably smart understand who's it for, what is it, and do we believe that you're the ones to do it? And that's the bar. That's it.
Has YC become...
Can you have a conversation?
That makes total sense. Has YC become too big? The number of companies each year, do you think?
Classic YC is amazing. And then the hard part for me is I don't know how to fund things that are not software. So I think they're experimenting. And the reality is we go back to the first principles, which is there's too much money in the world. And this is actually a very direct, like what you're doing, what YC is doing, all of these things are very important in the world of infinite capital, because everyone downstream from us believes that there aren't enough good ideas. And that's ridiculous. There are so many things that are broken in society.
Yeah.
Why are they not being fixed? Well, they're not being fixed because we have educational systems and funding systems and all of these things that are ossified and stuck, right? People go into these organizations and they never come out, right? And what a founder can do, and when we work at a startup, what you get to do is do something that's brand new.
Crack
and that's
it open.
Yield, right? So people are, here's this like giant infinite pool of capital, and then here's this like infinite number of crazy ass problems that need to be solved. And in the middle is like, we need to help these people. You need to, like, how do we put them in the right place where they can start these businesses that employ thousands of people and make like $1 billion or $100 billion in GDP?
The thing is, it's so easy to write that $100 million check in Twitter, Facebook, Uber, Coinbase, whatever, when they've hit scale and they're at past 50 or 100 million in revenue. But then taking that same 100 million and writing what would be, I would say, $101 million checks or $1,100,000 checks. Like, it's so much harder to write $100,000 checks. It takes so much more effort. And that really is where I think the logjam is, and where Techstars and YC and Launch Accelerator, like, this is where I think these sorting, I consider what YC does, what Techstars does, and what we do as a sorting mechanism, an AngelList. It's just a first level sort on the deluge of 100,000 pitches and getting it down to 2,000. And then it's up to seed funds like yours or Aileen Lee or Hunter and Homebrew, and Hunter doesn't follow me on Twitter.
Really? What'd you say to him?
I said, you're never coming on This Week in Startups again. I really had like no, I didn't say that.
Oh, man.
No, he can come on This Week in Startups anytime he wants. But I was like, he only follows 1,000. So I think he's one of those precious people. And I'm we post, I think, 5 clips of the show every day. So I guess that could be annoying to people who are not fans of the show or me. And I don't think Hunter likes me. So no, he does. I think I've had him on the pod a bunch of times. But anyway, he did his whole thing where he tweeted. And he said only his people can reply. And I was like, all right, well, I guess that's the end of our relationship. Yeah. There we go. All right, listen, you've been very generous with your time.
Thank you for hanging out,
I really appreciate it. And just, it's just, thank you for coming on the show, just because I'm lonely. And aside from the fact that people get benefits. This is just like us, 2-person room on Clubhouse, but instead, this would literally be us
platform,
hanging out with Bill Lee, having drinks in the lobby of the St. Regis like we did, 15 years ago when we were hanging out. Like, this is what I miss most about this shelter in place, is just the ability to hang out and just chew the fat, right? I mean,
so we were able to do this with us and our 100,000 friends on the internet.
Absolutely, 200,000 will hear this episode.
200,000, sorry.
For sure.
Many hundreds of thousands of people.
Many hundreds of thousands. All right, everybody. Follow Garry Tan. Subscribe, please. Go subscribe to his YouTube, youtube.com/Garry Tan, GARRYTAN. He's one of the greats, and it's great. You've always been one of the most considered and smartest folks I met in the industry, and it's just great to see you winning. I like to see good people win, It's a nice feeling. All right, Garry, continued success, and we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.